Oh, honey, I'd be so happy if you turned Nellie.
Ain't no way. I'm straight. I mean, I like a lot of queers, but I don't think they're equipment, you know? I like women.
But you could change.
This is a difficult video for me to make, so out of respect for everyone involved, I removed all of my relatives who would feel involved in this discussion from my Facebook friends page. For those of you who know me, the way that you deal with this information is going to be more telling of yourself and your character than anything else. Do whatever you want to with this information. I am simply presenting it so I can walk free and be better. I'm going to give you a series of scenarios that will maybe give you a feel for some of the difficulties that I've been going through, or some of the difficulties that I have in discussing this topic. I struggle immensely with discussing this because the information that I have and the knowledge that I have of the topic, it seems to be so all-encompassing and touches every aspect of my family and my life that it is overwhelming. The other reason why it is difficult to talk about is all of the information that I have. It has all been given to me by people who are at their breaking point and as a last resort to save their sanity have told me things that have haunted them forever. I would describe it exactly like the biblical concept of a scapegoat. I was told so much information and then pushed out from the group as if I was the one who had done all of those things that I was told. When I went to counseling, the gentleman tried to explain survivor's guilt to me, and then he gave me a true and what I thought was horrific scenario to compare with my personal experience. I was really confused for the longest time after he told me this story. And then I think years later, I think it makes more sense to me now. I need to write it all down or talk about it because it does affect me in a negative way. Scenario 1, I get a call from a relative. They are crying and I would say borderline hysterical. This is not the first time this person has called me and they have been hysterical, emotionally unglued. So this person who calls me on the phone, they ask me if I have any recollection of being sexually abused. This person will repeat the same pattern over and over. They will ask me questions like this or confide in me with pieces of information of a similar nature, but they will give me a minimal amount of information to go on. They tell me that old James Bond movie theme songs trigger them with all sorts of memories of some sort of sexual exploitation that was done to them. But I never get any details from anyone who talks to me that would allow me to identify perpetrators and events. And I'm going to tell you why. There was a point in the family history when another individual had some sort of emotional breakdown and confessed that they had been molested by a family member. That situation went out of control and things started to seep out into the public. but then it was shut down real quick and denied. I was on the side for pushing for full disclosure and that we should just kick this person out of the family and move on with things in a healthy way. They rallied around the abuser, and then I was kicked out of the family. That was my second time being kicked out. A certain individual's partner had made comments that were inappropriate to my wife, and I threatened to beat him up. We had a big fight over that confrontation with my family, and that person would turn out to be a pedophile with a crazy story. That's the one that broke my mind. I give this person the best response that I can, anything that I can remember from us being young, and I tell him the truth of what I remember, what I saw, what I remember hearing. And then after that, they hang up the phone, and then it's as if that conversation never happened, ever. The same person had his wife leave him. He called me and several other members in the family crying about it, and he would never tell us why she left. Other family members confirmed that story with me because he had talked to them also, but he never talked to us together. Later on, at a very critical time when I was forced to deal with things, I discussed that issue with both of them, and they both denied it. Broke my heart. His wife lied about it in my presence, to my face, when I had discussed it with him in her presence, and also one time on the phone. He was unaware that his wife had talked to me and told me several things in private, which led to that discussion that I had with him. So to see both of them sit in front of me and lie and say it never happened when they had also told other people confounded me. This is going to be the pattern for every other experience that I mentioned going forward. Scenario 2 is about another relative who told me the last time I spoke to him in person that I was his best friend. I told him what was going on inside of the family that I could see. He confided in me that a female member of our family had molested him, but they covered everything up. This was 4 or 5 years ago. That person has never spoken to me again, ever. One person is put in charge of an older abuser who is dying. They're supposed to feed this person. They're not feeding them properly. They tell me that knowing what was done to them, they think that it's absurd that the family would require them to care for this person. I am surprised at how clinical and emotionless I can make that sound. That is not the way that I experienced it. I suggested that that person seek help, and they did not do so. I could talk for a long time and give very specific details about events. It becomes overwhelming because it just seems as if it is a disease or some sort of violent presence in the family that just it devours and touches everything. It's overwhelming just to give all of the details. Essentially, it is victims victimizing and abused people turning into abusers. Add to that illegitimate and unclaimed offspring, and you have a very dysfunctional family dynamic. It all just feels like a nightmare of sexual dysfunction that is hard to articulate So I probably need to just write it down to clear my own mind and emotional slate. It's just a breeding ground for gender and sexual confusion. This is why I find this book that I'm currently reading, Gender Explained, helpful and beneficial to me. When I started to read this book, I would have considered myself gender illiterate in the sense that I am not up to speed with modern, non-religious discussions on sexuality and gender. I had told someone that I know who is a lesbian that I was reading this book, and she was familiar with it. And then I had made reference to some information that I was aware of inside of Islam, and she was aware of that information. So I think that I'm not gender illiterate so much as I have no mainstream gender literacy. The definitions of gender and then the explanation of gender affirming care made me so mad that I cried the first time I read this book. Gender here is described as an inner sense of oneself. Typically, an individual's gender is aligned with their physical manifestation of male or femaleness. Sometimes it isn't. Prior to reading this book, I had read a lot of information because I was interested in understanding my own sexuality. And then I didn't realize till I read this book that the things that I was reading about sexuality also branched out into the topic of gender. I was more aware of the subject of gender than I realized until I started to read this book, like the historical gender issue for hundreds of years, centuries. I was aware of it. Reading about gender affirming care helped me realize that I grew up in a gender destroying or gender destructive environment. I'm going to give you several examples of this gender destroying environment, this destructive approach to an individual's inner sense of themselves. That would be classified ultimately as some form of abuse. This is part of my struggle in discussing this topic. The amount of sexual abuse that I'm aware of is incredible. It just destroys the entire family. It festers. No one deals with it. It is an absolute destructive force within the family. The other factor is the sheer number of homosexuals and lesbians and individuals who have non-traditional gender attraction that I can affirm is also staggering. So imagine if your inner self says one thing and then externally you are compelled for a variety of reasons to live something other than what you are experiencing in your inner self. Naturally, madness is going to occur. I realize now I got stuck inside of that madness. So I'm going to try and give a little insight into what I mean by that.